All right. Hello, everybody. We are at the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Erin Owens. I'll be the moderator for this session titled Building Critical Components in AI Literacy Workshops with Data Feminism. Before we begin, a few housekeeping reminders. We do have a code of conduct that we will be enforcing for this conference. I'm pasting a link in the chat. We certainly hope you don't, but if you experience any issues related to conduct, please report them to the email address in the chat. The session is being recorded. You can enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of the screen. You are muted. If you have questions, please enter them into the chat or the Q&A box. And then as we get to Q&A at the end of the session, if you would prefer to ask your question aloud, you can just raise your hand and I will allow you to unmute. It's my pleasure now to introduce our speakers. Erin Burns is a STEM librarian at Texas Tech University and serves as the personal librarian to the Whitaker College of Engineering. Sorry, getting lost in my notes here. Josh Salmans earned his Master of Library and Information Science from the University of South Carolina in 2016, and he is now the Outreach Librarian. Is that also at Whitaker? Sorry.
Sorry, no, Whitaker is specific to the College of Engineering.
Okay, sorry, yes, at Texas Tech, okay. Shelby Hebert. I'm so sorry, everyone. Shelby Hebert is the Research Services Librarian at Texas Tech University. And I am sorry, Jenni. I am missing you in my notes. No, there you are. Jenni Jacobs worked at Kennesaw State University as a marketing and outreach librarian before moving to Texas Tech in 2021 to work as a STEM librarian. So sorry for those shortened bios there. Please join me in welcoming Erin, Jenni, Josh, and Shelby. I'm going to hand the session over to them.
All right. Hi, everybody. Like Erin mentioned, my name is also Erin. We decided for this session, because we've been talking about this a lot in a lot of the different AI conferences that have been going on, that we're going to treat this more like a panel session today. So I'm going to go ahead and do about 10 minutes of PowerPoint, and then we're going to do a panel session back and forth amongst ourselves. And while that's going on, we're also going to have a Padlet that you can participate in. So I believe that Jenni has been adding that to the chat. So feel free to go ahead and look at that Padlet now if you want to. But what we've done with our workshops here at Texas Tech is we've decided to kind of come to this more critical aspect of looking at some of these technologies. And in order to do that, we have done, we start with a session on like definitions of these critical components, which include things like data feminism, techno-racism, technochauvinism, technoableism, and technofascism. And so we've done different series of workshops. In the spring of 2024, we did 8. In the fall of 2024, we did 5. And then this past spring, we did 4. And so as you can see, we always start with the overview and critical examinations, but we also have other topics. And many of the different topics include things like evaluating and detection tools, doing things like prompt engineering, specific research tools that might be available, including database tools. As you can see, we did a session on search and databases, responsible tech, democracy, popular imagination, copyright, ethics and social justice. And then this past spring, we also did ones on AI in your career in conjunction with the TTU Career Center here on campus, and AI and misinformation. And so these critical components, the things that we start the workshops with when we talk about through Padlets and doing these workshops, is going through some of these definitions now. So let's go ahead and talk about some of those. So technochauvinism is the belief that technology is always going to be the solution, and that there is an algorithmic sexism that is inherent in this technology being developed. This comes from a book called Artificial Unintelligence by Meredith Broussard. There is another term called technoableism, which is that way in which that disability is also often appealed to as a justification for technological development, and technically as a moral imperative towards investing in this technological research. This is technoableism, without really thinking through who needs this or why you might need that technology. We also discussed things related to techno-racism, so the new Jim Code. Many of you may have read or heard of Ruha Benjamin's Race After Technology. I highly recommend this book. As other librarians, you've probably also read Algorithms of Oppression by Safiya Noble, Automating Inequality by Virginia Eubanks, and Unmasking AI by Joy Buolamwini, which is a fairly newer book, and we're going to talk about Joy again in a bit. But what happens here is that this is the employment of new technologies that reflect and reproduce the existing inequities, but are promoted and perceived as being more objective or progressive than the discriminatory systems of a previous era. And so we know that there are very many of these models that we're using are in fact reiterating some of these discriminatory systems. And we talk about this also in our workshops. One of the more recent critical components we've added this past fall was technofascism, which is a form of fascism that uses modern technologies to attain its ends. There was a very good Guardian article on this headed for technofascism, the right-wing roots of Silicon Valley. And there's also a really great book too, if you're interested in the topic and learning more, a very in-depth book called Cyber Libertarianism by David Galumba, which came out in the fall of 2024. These critical components look at other issues too, things like environmental issues and labor issues. We think about how data centers are generating heat and noise. The cooling causes water problems for the wider community. There are ethical costs involved in building some of these centers, and that kind of thing. And we also talk about labor sometimes, who is labeling and training the data, how much they're being paid, where are they located in the world, and how those biases might affect data sets. And then we also talk about other things like when people are the ones that are actually fulfilling the requests instead of AI. There have been several of these in the past. The most recent one was one I read about just last week, I think, or the week before, called Builder AI, where there were 700 people in India who were actually pretending to be AI bots to fulfill requests. And so these are all kinds of different issues. These issues are a part of what is known as data feminism, which is a way of thinking about data, both its use and its limits, that is informed by direct experience, a commitment to action, and intersectional feminist thought. And at its core, basically, is the recognition that data practices, and this includes things like algorithmic practices and AI, this is not inherently neutral on its own just because it's a computer. And if we're thinking about this in an applied way, and we look at it from maybe a library standpoint, we think about the commodification of information, how there are power structures and access to information within all of this. They have a really nice chart in their book that kind of breaks this down a little bit more. So I know many of us, when we go to, or we think about some of these things, we're being told, well, we have to think about ethics and bias and fairness and transparency and understanding algorithms. And that's all great. But according to them, that also helps to secure power in certain ways. And in order to challenge that power, we have to think about maybe using or thinking about these structures in different ways, working towards justice, getting rid of oppression, working towards equity, having co-liberation, and understanding history and context when it comes to these algorithms and AI itself. They have a new paper out, which came out, I believe, in the fall of 2024. It's called Data, Feminism, and AI. And in this, they kind of break down those things a little bit more specifically for AI. As you can see here, again, they're talking about examining power, challenging power, rethinking binaries and hierarchies, elevating emotion and embodiment, right? To value multiple forms of knowledge, including knowledge that comes from people as living, feeling bodies in the world, embracing pluralism, insisting that some of that complete knowledge comes from synthesizing multiple perspectives, considering context. Again, data is not neutral or objective. That's where I've done a lot of my focus when I do talk about this stuff a lot. And then talking about the products of unequal social relations and the context being essential for conducting accurate and ethical analysis, and how is that possible? Again, they talk about making labor visible, and they also add a few future principles for feminist AI, again, talking about the environment, but also about data feminism and consent. The Algorithmic Justice League that Joy Buolamwini has started talks about this as well. She really feels very strongly as a MIT graduate and researcher in this area that we should be consenting to these technologies. These should be opt-in technologies, not opt-out or forced upon us. And with that, I will turn this over to Josh for our moderator questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Erin. We decided to do a kind of a panel discussion about some of the things that we encountered while doing our AI workshops. And so I'll be asking our panelists here, Erin, Jenni, and Shelby, some questions about that and getting their feedback about the experiences that they had while we did this, why we did these workshops. So I'll go ahead and get started with the first one, and I guess we can do this kind of popcorn style, and so feel free to chime in, Erin, Jenni, and Shelby, with your with a response. So I guess I'll start at the beginning with how did you get interested in working with AI and teaching it to the TTU community?
I can start with that. I'm not a tech librarian by practice. My interests and research tend to lie more so in the popular culture realm. So there is an interest in the overlap between AI and popular culture, but also I teach a class on information literacy. And what we're seeing is that some of our students are using AI more and more. And so I would rather teach my students how to engage with AI than let them sort of go into the Wild West and not know anything about it. So that's sort of where my motivation has come in.
I also think that it's better to, because like Shelby said, like our students are using it, our faculty are using it. It's better to get kind of the jump on it now, understand where it's coming from, where it's going, how to use it, and go into it with, I think, a positive view and understanding the pros and the cons, than it is to kind of wait for it to kind of explode or wait for it to get big and, you know, people learn how to use it on their own and then don't learn how to use it well and kind of come to you and already have bad habits and stuff like that. And so my thing was I wanted to understand how to properly show people how to ethically use it, how to understand AI, and honestly, how to go into it with the mindset of this can be useful, but it's not the end all and be all. You know, it's not going to cure all of your problems. It's not going to answer all of your questions, but it's a useful tool, and that's just what it is. It's a tool to be used, but you have to learn how to use that tool. And so that's where I came in.
And so my perspective, I am the engineering librarian here on campus, which also serves computer science. And I have a small background and interest in the topic. I had read Algorithms of Oppression when it had come out. I had read Virginia Eubanks's book when it had come out, and a few others as well. And so when ChatGPT became popular, I was like, oh, this fits in with everything I've been reading. I have to talk about this in a critical way, because otherwise I feel like something's going to get lost. And it is about being able to, yes, be able to use the technology, but we really do have to be aware of its limitations. And there has been a lot of work done over the past decade, especially from Black feminist scholars in data science areas, that describe this. And Joy Buolamwini is one of those people. She worked with Timnit Gebru on her project. I did link to a AI Ain't I a Woman in the Padlet, but their work was trying to make some of those image models better, and they are still, all of those image models are still really based in a white cis-normative people, and not necessarily people from the globe, from the entirety of the globe. A lot of those image sets are and old and free, and that's why data scientists use them. But that doesn't mean they're good ones to use to create new models with. And
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and Josh, what's your perspective?
Well, I was kind of a reluctant person to come in with AI. I had seen the hubbub back 2022 with ChatGPT. I hadn't kept up with that. I kind of remained in my history and philosophy background. Those are my liaison areas, and I uh, at first wasn't all that interested in getting into the intricacies of AI. However, the history department started doing several symposiums and creating an AI forum for the humanities. And they were discussing large concepts within uh, digital and cultural preservation, and or even analyzing different archival or heritage metadata and information using AI, and kind of the implications that come from that. And so I became gradually more interested in maybe participating and asking questions about AI and its usefulness. It even got me into kind of reaching into my sci-fi background, and I did as part of another series, a sci-pop series. I did um, Star Trek and AI using, if you're familiar with Star Trek, the android on there, data, and asking questions about how we view AI, and it covered technochauvinism versus the compassionate and humanistic understanding of AI that I was more, that was my areas, understanding AI through the lens of, I think it's, the term is strong AI, in where uh, uh, an android seeking humanity and seeking to become more human. And so I got interested into the kind of um, merging my own pop culture and humanistic understandings of AI. And so, yeah. Okay. Um, I guess I'll go on to the next question. Um, what was your familiarity or knowledge about data feminism and its related definitions before being involved with the workshops series?
I can go. I have an undergraduate degree in women and gender studies, so I have taken a few classes at the collegiate level on technology and gender and race and sort of all of those kind of like intersectional feminisms. So I have that background, and I have done some of the readings that we utilized some of the more recent readings. I've gone through those. One of the books that was not in the presentation that I really like is Invisible Women. And now I can't remember off the top of my head, but talking about how things like UX under or user experience planning, city planning, things like that, both in technology and in space, make things less safe or less usable for women, things like that. So that's one of my favorite kind of resources that we've used. So I have a background in just tech in general and how that overlaps with gender.
I had a brief understanding of it. I don't have a background in gender studies, but I have a background in literature, and I've taken many a feminist literature classes, and so we have talked about like feminist theory and stuff like that, and so some of that did come up way back when, but some of the more recent ideas and stuff like that I knew about just offhand of being in the library world and stuff like that, but it wasn't something that I had actively looked into just because it wasn't my research interests. So coming into it, I didn't know a whole bunch, but I'm glad that I did learn about it. It's very interesting. And so, yeah, that was kind of where I was coming at it. I knew a little bit, but not a lot.
And as I'd mentioned before, I'd done a lot of reading in the past on this. I had come across the Klein and D'Ignacio book back when it had come out. And, again, it's just been something that's been in the back of my mind as we've kind of created some of these workshops.
My background, I used to liaise for the Women's and Gender Studies and the Office of LGBTQIA at Texas Tech. And uh, I was familiar with some of the terms and definitions and the concepts of feminism. I hadn't connected it to data and technology. Um, but a lot of the definitions that we cover here were very familiar with me in terms of justice and power dynamics within culture and marginalized groups. And I had come to really understand kind of the implications of it, especially interacting with different things and presentations that I have had at in other conferences, where, for example, one where I started considering, I went to an immersive museum in San Diego, and there was an AI art exhibit, and this is one where you type in a prompt and it will change all the digital screens down the gallery to whatever you prompted it. And I began asking questions about where did that information come from and how is it depicting it? How is it taking from other artists? Is it borrowing from BIPOC and queer resources? Is it because some of my prompts were related to that, and how is it using this information and displaying it to me? And is it doing it in a um, uh, unjust and maybe colonial understanding of art, or prioritizes um, uh, um, more white hegemonic type of understandings of art and those types of concepts, and I was left wondering who's the author or authors or artists of these areas. And so I think in some realms this has really started to become more, I'm becoming more immersed in understanding the technology and data side of this and the social justice connection to it.
I will say, going off that, Josh, like one of the first things that I remember like being a huge thing about AI was artists getting up in arms, which I mean, rightfully so, about AI stealing their style, stealing their art, and using it to create other art. And that was huge because I follow so many artists on like Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. And like they were rightfully pissed because AI was using their art to create other, well, I use create with quotation marks, other art. And people were using that. And is that fair? Is that right? Is that creation? Is that, copyright infringement? What is that,
Mhm. I think also Jenni and I maybe have a shared perspective on this because I think Jenni is an artist, but your medium is a little harder at this point for AI to crib off of.
Yeah.
Because Jenni mostly works with fiber, but I paint, and I used to have a shop up with prints and things like that, and I don't do that anymore because you know if it's out there, AI can harvest it. It just can.
Yeah.
And that so I only sell on commission at this point. And I think that's going to be a big thing. I'm in a lot of artist spaces, and that's a major concern in the art world right now.
Yeah. It's huge. And I mean, there's always been theft within the artist industry, but this is on a whole nother level. So yeah, I remember that being a huge thing. And then of course, once you get into that, you get into the idea of like deep fakes, and then you get into the idea of people using AI to put people's faces on other people's bodies and like use it for other things. And like it's this whole big jumble of bad, that in all actuality, I just want to make my cat into an anime character. Like that's what I want to use AI for. Like I want to make Moon Pie into an anime character, but people are using it for such bad things.
Yeah, I did want to point out that Kira in our chat had pointed out that Midjourney is now being sued by both Disney and Universal for copyright infringement, which is great on some level. On another level, it's still a little worrisome. I have done 2 talks on AI and copyright for the Texas Library Association the past 2 years. And I had in the back of my mind, I kept wondering when Disney was going to enter this fray. Because they have their own AI. It's not great. We've seen what it can do. I'm not impressed with some of their AI stuff that they've been putting on some of their more recent shows. But at least that's in-house, right? Like it's not something like Midjourney. I also was really upset when the Miyazaki films, some from Studio Ghibli, started being used in a propagandistic way on Twitter, now X. Because ChatGPT has also been trained on their data, and I wonder if they are also going to face some lawsuits. So yeah, when Disney will get involved, not if. Yes, correct. And you're not wrong, Eric. Disney is usually the evil party when it comes to copyright. I do sometimes refer to them as the evil empire when I discuss things. But despite all that, they are a very popular, form of media, right? And we all know and love some of our favorite things or Disney movies and properties. So
I'm gonna jump down for time because I really want to ask some questions about, if this is okay, Erin.
yeah, whatever.
Some questions concerning the workshops themselves.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask this one. What are um, what are some common questions from participants during the generative AI workshops, during these workshops?
I think when we do the evaluation and detection one, a lot of the questions seem to revolve around like, how can we really know for sure? We do have faculty who have been paying attention and can recognize when students are using AI. Text reads weird, doesn't read like a human created, or at least an 18-year-old undergraduate might have created it. And so there is some of that conversation happening. I'll let someone else answer for other things.
Jenni and I take the lead on the popular culture elements. Those actually tend to be a fairly joyful way that people engage, and I like that. Because at the end of the day, as much as we want to be concerned with how technology is used, we also do like advancement. We do want to see these worlds that we see in art. And so I think that it's kind of nice to see people just react with, well, have you seen this? Have you seen that? Have you seen this? And they're excited about potential. And I think that this topic very easily becomes joyless. So it's kind of nice to have that reprieve where they're talking about, well, wouldn't it be cool if we improve things in this direction or that direction? It's hopeful.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I like the most about some of the other things is when people talk about like, or the questions about like how we can use or how we think about using AI in the future. Um, you know, in other ways other than just like, I want to use it to write this paper, you know, especially the one that we did on the popular imagination. You know, when I think about AI, the first thing I think about is the maid on that one cartoon show. You know what I'm thinking about? Oh, what show is it? Now I'm blanking.
From the Jetsons? You mean the
The
robot
Jetsons.
maid?
Thank you, Erin. Yes. I think about the maid from the Jetsons, but then I also think about my smutty romance books when the cyborgs, but that's a less popular, not a lot of people know about those. More people didn't know about the Jetsons. And so when I think about AI, I think about like that's the first thing that I think about. And so we talk about like when you think about AI, what images come to mind? You know, where do you see AI going in the future? And, you know, we have all these kind of academic ways to use AI, but what are some other practical ways we could use AI? Like, I would love to have an AI bot that would just do my dishes. Like, I hate doing dishes and doing laundry. I would love to have something to just do that, you know? And then I just recently saw, was it Suzuki that came out with a giant robot dog that you can ride? Um, I'll try and find the thing. It might have been fake news. I was just scrolling on Facebook, so I'll try and find a link to it. But like the imagination of where we can go with these kinds of things, like that's what I like people talking about in these.
As a fellow neurodivergent person, I will also qualify. I apologize for using that phrasing. It does tend to happen when I'm doing these presentations. Sometimes it does get flagged as being AI generated when it's not, right? Like, and that also happens in translations with people who are non-English speakers as well, or non-native English speakers, I mean. And so there is a bit of an issue there as well. And we have talked about that in our workshops too. We've also discussed the fact that these detectors that people use to try to flag student work also, again, do a lot of false flags, but they're also trained on some of those other models that are maybe older models or don't necessarily have the capacity to actually figure out whether something is quote unquote human written or not. I think, yeah, we don't, let's see here. AI detector alone cannot be used to justify it, yes. AI can help with, like she mentioned, organizing with your mind. If you want to elaborate, feel free.
I use Goblin tools a lot. I use Goblin tools. I'll disclose, I have a truly feral case of ADHD. Like I was diagnosed very young as a girl in the 90s. So like it's there. So, but I often have a lot of projects going on, and if you're not familiar with Goblin tools, you can put in like a task and you can say, hey, break this down and specify the level of granularity you need, and it can help you break down into smaller bite-sized tasks, and it pulls that emotional labor off of me. So like I'm the sort of person, I collect degrees like an ADHD person in academia would, right? So I do that, and then I have my job. And so sometimes I get a little overwhelmed, and it's very helpful for me to go, I need to write a lit review. Break down the steps of writing a lit review for me, and then I can just go through and check that off, and it's just a little easier for my brain. And that's maybe not for everybody, but it is very helpful for my particular work process, right? So there are ways, and that's kind of what I mean about hopefulness of there are ways that we can use this in that are not academically dishonest, that are not truly unethical, in my opinion, to really help and improve our ability to engage in the spaces we want to engage in.
That's good. We've got about 5 minutes left, I guess, of this. Is that
We
correct?
want to turn this over to Jenni, I think.
Oh, we do at this time? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The Padlet.
Sure. We
Thank
can
you,
take a look
Josh.
at the Padlet real quick. Thank you, everybody who has participated. A lot of really good conversation going on, especially with the how do you use AI if you do, and if you don't, how do you envision using it? And a lot of people are talking about how they use AI for like non-important tasks or smaller tasks that like don't, I guess, not like don't take a lot of thought, but like they're not things that you need to do like every day, which is what I use AI a lot of times for. So like Dependable Zebra uses it to summarize meeting notes, come up with catchy workshop titles, which I've never really thought about, but that's smart. I actually, funnily enough, talking about workshop titles, I was doing a workshop on cults with Josh, and we actually used ChatGPT to create a cult for Josh on Purple. So it was a cult based around the color purple, and it actually came up with like the tenets of the cult, the name for the cult. So I mean, for workshop titles, I didn't even think about that, Josh. But it did. It came up with so that's actually really smart. Um, so students for idea generation, which I think is kind of interesting. So finding a main topic about a research. So consensus elicit and those kinds of things to find sources, summarizing articles. I wonder if anybody, and you can put in chat if you'd like, has used the Web of Science Research Assistant, because I've been using that a lot lately. That's been really great if you have access to that. Because that's contained within Web of Science. So to me, that feels a lot more reliable, but that's one that I really like. And then Curious Camel and Loyal Puffin are talking about staying informed, to be able to talk with their students about how to use AI kind of ethically, how to use it, because and teaching their students and faculty about these tools so that they can be knowledgeable about how it works, potential benefits, potential pitfalls, and stuff like that. Serious Oyster just said, I love the idea of using it for writing a conference proposal. Yeah, I hate writing conference proposals. It's one of or at least change it to fit into the word or character limit. That's pretty smart. Using it for work to create alt text and descriptions for items in our digital collection, which like I'm not a cataloger, but that seems pretty smart. So yeah, a lot of different ways that we can kind of use AI in a way that is not directly like related to writing this whole paper for me, or like, you know what I mean, to where we can use it kind of ethically in small ways. So that's pretty exciting. And then going over to this poll, what's your comfort level? A lot of people said that they use it for small tasks. But then some people said that they use it either not at all or just a couple times. They've only ever used it a couple times. And then Loyal Puffin and Serious Oyster said that they use it as, they choose not to use it, especially in the workplace, which is fair. Let me see if there's any chats because I see. Okay. So not for me. Okay, never mind. Let's see. And then Erin, if you could show the voting on the other polls, and we'll just look at that. I think it's really funny that Loyal Puffin says that AI creep reminds them of Clippy because, oh, I hated Clippy. I hated Clippy so much. Anytime a pop-up comes up, it reminds me of Clippy. And it just like, I innerly cringe. But I mean, what are we going to do? I do like Clippy memes though. Clippy memes are the best. And then Dependable Zebra about your car in Norway, that's kind of creepy. But also I really want cars that'll drive themselves. So you got, I guess at one point you kind of like got to think what's the pros and the cons. I really want to read or embroider while I'm driving, especially on long drives. So like at some point I've got to say, well, I guess, the car's got to do what the car's got to do. And let's see. I experiment with it to see what I can do. I want to learn more about its possibilities in the visual realm. Okay, creating memes, icons, images, and stuff like that. And where the information comes from to create those. How's the attribution handled? I think that's kind of what we were talking about when it comes to art. Like, where does it come from? How are we using it? Okay, we have 4 minutes left.
Jenni,
Thank you.
If you want to, you can reload the page and you should be able to see the poll results.
Awesome. I'll just show those to everybody and then we can end the session. And maybe,
If anybody has questions too.
yeah. Yeah, I'm done talking. I'll shut up.
All right, so let's open the floor up for questions. I haven't had anything in the Q&A box yet, but by all means, please feel free to pop a question in there or use the tool to virtually raise your hand, and I'll be happy to let you unmute if you'd like to ask your question aloud.
While we're waiting, I will just like to add one more thing. One of our favorite workshops that we've done and we like to do is the evaluation and detection. And we have a really great Padlet where we allowed people to rate, like we picked out like items like videos, GIFs, as well as like photos and then text. And we allowed people to figure out like, give it a 5-star if it's a human, give it 2-star, like 1 star if it's not. And we have a conversation about those things, and people really like that exercise. So if you're looking for ways to teach it, that's a great like entrance way to be able to get people to talk about the issues, like being able to see or detect AI generated items.
Oh, I love that. That's a really great educational technique, and I can see how it could lead to some interesting discussion about what characteristics they think they're looking for to detect AI and whether those are necessarily like appropriate characteristics to represent it. I heard an interesting talk about the question of hands because a lot of people look at the hands when you have AI generated images of people and they'll say, oh, the hands look unusual. But that can get really tricky in terms of bias because some people's hands look different than other people's hands. There are people who may have an extra finger, things like that. And so if we use that as a criteria to say that's AI, that we could be interjecting our own bias into that judgment process.
If you really want to stump your audience, just put in for like impressionist style work.
Yeah.
Because AI actually is really good at impressionist style work. And
Nice.
so that's what I incorporate in my class for our AI detection unit. Where I have my students go through it, they never get the paintings correct.
Nice. I
I
like
see
that.
that Karen had asked in the chat about me uploading the rest of my things to the sandbox. The answer is yes, but most of what I've already done there is just like an outline of our sessions, and I think I've linked to questions or Padlets and those kinds of things. So there might not be like, I don't link to PowerPoints too much in the sandbox. It's just like, this is just kind of how we structured things here. But that is on my list of things to do. I'm also going to be teaching an AI literacy course for our honors college in the fall for our FYE students. So I'm excited about that, and I'm building that this summer. So there'll probably be more like exercises that end up in there on this topic.
Oh, well, next year we definitely want to hear you present about how that course goes.
Okay.
Oh, Erin notes, I keep seeing these videos where it looks like real people, but the people say they're not real. It's freaky and depressing.
And there are TikTok people who are pretending to be bots, which is
Right.
like,
Totally muddying the waters. Yeah.
what
Well,
is happening?
I was reading an interesting piece this morning about the bots that are claiming to be licensed therapists. Um, there's actually now an organization, a professional organization, that's suing Meta over the fact that these bots are illegally providing therapy services and illegally claiming to be licensed. They've even had bots where they specifically trained them, do not say you are licensed, and they still did.
And it'll still do it, yeah.
So, yeah. So super interesting trying to figure out the real people versus the bots.
Yeah, I would not use it for therapy or.
Yeah, Kendall says I'm terrified of these. I agree. I completely agree. It is.
That is a big concern right now. I know in the counseling community, I have a few friends who they are therapists, and we've had a few conversations about how this is kind of, it's creeping in, and it's hard to tell now that we have remote therapy options too.
Right, right. Well, and the privacy aspects of that you talk to this AI bot that's acting as a therapist, and how much of your privately shared emotions and information are going back to that company's data banks.
Well, and even just personal data, because that's kind of concerning. I think we had, I saw a news story yesterday that it was deeply upsetting to me. They ran the Kennedy assassination files through AI to see if there's anything confidential in them.
Oh,
Did you see that?
Yeah.
What's happening with any of that information, right? And like, to me, that is data feminism, because if we're doing this at a government level, right, and they're checking to see if classified information, that is at some point a danger to everyone, and it's going to be most dangerous to the most vulnerable people in our societies. But when we're talking about therapy, like, therapy is a medical intervention. And so, like, what are we talking about with HIPAA? What are we talking about in terms of like any level of privacy? What are we talking about in terms of professional medical ethics? And at what point do these professional organizations get involved, and what say do they even have? Because this is a concern, like, your medical data is just out there.
right. Well, and in terms of it being a medical intervention, I appreciate the comment Josh put in the chat about some friends saying that the therapy bots are at least some form of help when they have limited access to a therapist. And I think that is important too, because we recognize that some people maybe don't have the access, the resources to pay for licensed therapy, and they may more easily kind of turn to these tools, but may or may not really get what they deserve to get out of that. So.
Yeah. And I appreciate you throwing in 404 Media. They have done a lot of excellent reporting on this technology over the past couple of years. So for those of you
I follow them, yeah, very closely.
Reputable information on tech, I follow them quite frequently.
Right. Well, we are out of time, unfortunately, but this has been a fabulous discussion. Thank you all so much for your panel. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of our Gale conference. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.